understand that they don't know what they're doing and you don't know what you're doing, which is why they had to go with cost reimbursable. On the other end of the spectrum is firm fixed price. Firm fixed price means they're going to give you the list of requirements, you're going to review all those requirements, give them a price, and that price is what you're going to have to live with. So if the requirements end up being taking more resources than you proposed, you have to eat that cost. So it's a less risky. So the government typically tries to start a requirement from this cost reimbursable and move it towards firm fixed price. So you'll see examples where, I'll give you a case in point. I worked on a deal once where Department of Labor handles these, what do they call it? They're work centers. So it's basically, they're located all throughout the country, and teenagers can go there. Job Corps, and they try, thank you. They, I lived and breathed it for 3 months, and now it's permanently blocked forever. But they had started off with those Job Corps centers. This is where they provide training to high school kids and help get people on their path towards a career. Do you guys have one around here? Mm-hmm. So those Job Corps centers previously had been cost reimbursable, meaning the government would just pay the costs that these groups were incurring. But now what they're doing is they're transitioning from cost reimbursable because they feel that everybody's had a chance to do it for so long, and that the contractors that are in this game, because typically there's so many of these centers that, you know, a company might win 3 in Illinois and 3 in Florida, and maybe they lose the 3 in Florida the next go around, but they win 3 in South Dakota. So it's, you know, they're all basically the same type centers. They specialize in different skill sets, but they provide fundamentally the same skills. So the government, they knew that they have like a set number of vendors that tend to go after this. Like if you're a brand new contractor, you don't typically say, gee, I want to run a Job Corps center. If anything, you would be like a subcontractor to one of these other companies so you could learn what the ropes are. But what they did was they moved from a cost reimbursable type model to a firm fixed price model. So they changed the way the RFP was structured, they changed the clauses that were in it, all to have the onus for cost overruns on the contractor. So you'll see them do that kind of thing. So when they're trying to select a contract type, they have to figure out, are they going to get enough competition with regard to price? Are there going to be enough companies? They have to at least have 3. So are they going to get enough to do that? So let's take another example. When, for those of us that are old enough to remember, when we went to year 2000, the government was trying to do firm fixed price contracts for software application people to go in and fix government systems, because if you remember, nobody knew what was going to happen when we went from December 31st, 11:59 to January 1st, 2000 at 12 o'clock, right? Because these systems have been around forever, and they were only used to calculating two digits for the year, and we didn't know if we were all going to go back to 1900, right? So the government was trying to contain their risk. So what did they want to do? What kind of contract did they want to go after? What did the government want?
They wanted a firm price.
They wanted firm fixed price. They wanted us to commit that we would get all this done. And what vendor do you think would step up to a firm fixed price contract?
Not a chance, because most of them, the guys that wrote the software were already gone.
Right. Yeah, so nobody was willing to step up to that. So that's an example of where, you know, the government was trying to place so much risk on the contractors, and there were no contractors willing to step up to it. So the government had to change their contract type because they weren't going to get enough competition using the other way. They also make a decision is when you're doing firm fixed price, you're doing price analysis. And when you're doing cost reimbursable, you're doing cost analysis. What do I mean by that? In a firm fixed price, they're going to put an RFP out, and at least 3 vendors are going to provide prices to these same exact requirements. And they're going to look at your price, and your price, and they're going to say, okay, which one is the lowest price? Do any of them give me above and beyond what I've asked for? And they're going to do their analysis, but it's going to be based on that final bottom line price. Not that you have 10 people working on the contract and you have 9 people working on the contract. They're not getting into all that detail. They're looking at what your bottom line price is on a firm fixed price. In cost reimbursable, they're looking at all your individual cost elements because they're going to be reimbursing you for all those individual costs. So they manage cost reimbursable much more tightly than they do a firm fixed price. Why don't they manage a firm fixed price as tightly? They're going to pay the amount, and if you're not providing the services, they'll terminate you for default. If you don't, if it costs you more, it's going to cost you more, not the government. They've already allotted their money. So that ties in. Type and complexity of the requirement. Again, sometimes the government knows they've been procuring the same requirement time after time after time. They've got it down, and they're going to go to a firm fixed price model. But if it's a brand new requirement where they don't know and you don't know, they're going to go to cost reimbursable. Urgency of the requirement. You know, it's one thing to be able to provide a service, but if today you have to provide it in Botswana, tomorrow you have to provide it in Libya, and you're in this constant, they're going to probably go with cost reimbursable there. Because again, it's too fluid, and they're not going to have contractors that are willing to step up to that risk. I mean, can you imagine like having enough people to be able to send all over the world? Period of performance or length of a production run. That's going to be something else that drives. If they're doing a prototype of something, do you think they're going to go with cost reimbursable or firm fixed price?
It's a prototype, it's got to be price dollar, you know, flexible price,
Cost
sorry.
reimbursable,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Because if it's a prototype,
Yeah.
they're not exactly sure how this thing should be working, and if they don't know, you don't know. But if it's the millionth unit that's being produced, what are they going to want to have by that point? Firm fixed price. Contractors take technical capability and financial responsibility. So are you a brand new contractor in this field, or are you someone who's seasoned and been doing it a while? That could drive what contract type they go after. How adequate is your cost accounting system? So there was a case where I was with a large company. We were a subcontractor to a small company because it was a small business set aside. And so they had 51% of the deal, we had 49% of the deal, which is what the requirement is. And the company, small company, did not have a cost accounting system in place. And so the government still awarded the contract to them, but they said until you have a cost accounting system, the larger company has to run all the procurement through their shop. So they make decisions like that. Concurrent contracts. How many contracts do you have going on? You know, if you're a 3-person shop and you just won 2 other firm fixed price contracts for $10 million apiece, they're probably not going to give you a third one. You're going to be considered a little bit risky unless you can show that you have subcontractors that you can bring in and work with. So, you know, they look at things like that. Extent and nature of proposed subcontracting. How much of this work are you going to subcontract out? And what your acquisition history is, and what their acquisition history is with regard to this requirement. So lots of different factors. We talked about this before, methods of acquisition. They can use simplified acquisition procedures, usually for contracts under $100,000. And these are what's done with the purchase card, right? Did you want to say something?
Oh, I was saying that the threshold has changed, it's now,
500?
no, it's 250, I think.
250, okay. So that number's 250. Reduces administrative costs if they can use this purchase cards, but it acts like a credit card, so much easier. What it has done, it has really improved opportunities with all of us as small business owners, because as long as we can accept a credit card, this business can come to us. It promotes efficiency and economy in contracting.
Excuse me, could I add something on the
Please.
P cards? For small businesses, one of the main things for the government to be able to do business with you, and I think probably y'all have already gone through this, is to make sure your SAM registration is good to go. What that does, it allow us, ask the government to say, okay, so you're already registered, the government knows you. It's not necessarily a sole source, but then we can pick and choose. So instead of going to Lowe's, you own something that's a lumber, we say, okay, small business, you're registered, we're going with you, because small business is priority, it's one of the priorities. And So 25,000 is the one single purchase under 25,000, and it's 300,000 is the cap for
A vendor,
the other vendors, right?
a vendor within the same agency.
Correct.
So the government can't take a $350,000 procurement and break it up into all these small 25,000.
Right, that's a split
You have to
purchase.
go up to you can only go up to 300,000. Yeah, the first week of class, we all got into the same system.
That's excellent. That's the best thing. Also, if you're planning on getting more into it, getting to GSA, that's one of the biggies. We always have to check there first.
Why
Better
don't you
enough.
talk about who you're with?
Oh, I'm with Job Corps. We're a federal center, not a contract center. And you were talking about
Yeah.
contract centers. And so what I do is I'm an administrative officer, so I'm a CO and a COR, so I deal with all the contracts that come in. So one of the things, if you're doing like personnel, we do give out a lot of contracts for temporary or seasonal personnel, if you're into that kind of thing. But definitely, if there's some things that you definitely want to get into if you want to do business with the government. On the what we call micro purchasing, so anything under 25,000, we definitely want to use small business and local.
Would you be willing, after lunch, to talk for 5 minutes on things that make you crazy about contractors?
Absolutely.
Because quite honestly, you don't get this opportunity, because when you're on an actual deal, he can't talk to you and you can't talk to him.
Right, not until it's done.
Exactly.
And then we have limited things that we can discuss. We can discuss schedules, what we actually need, what the timeframes are, but the negotiation part between the government, the receiver, and the vendor, it's hands off.
Yeah. So please think during lunch what questions have been burning in your heart about what to ask contracting officers, because again, you don't get this chance. And we're going to talk about the difference between the two hats he wears of contracting officer and core, and what they can do and what they can't do, and who does what during that process. So we'll get into a little bit of an explanation about that, but feel free to ask him questions, because you really don't get this opportunity very often. I'm pleased to have you here. I didn't know you were coming, so that's
Thank
great.
Yeah.
It's funny that
I tried to make all the rest, but other things came into play, so I just wanted to kind of get a feel from the vendor's end, so that my communication with the vendor is a lot more, and the expectations that we have, because we go through acquisitions management, which everything for a contract will go through acquisitions management. And so me telling them what I need and the vendor telling, what I mean. And sometimes a vendor will call me, and then I'll ask whoever it is up in Denver, saying, hey, can I discuss this with the vendor? Normally they'll say, yeah, it's not a problem, but stay away from these subjects. But okay. Which makes a really good working relationship, especially if you get the contract awarded to you. But there are some serious expectations, and if you don't comply, you could be fined. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen. We normally don't go down that road, but it can get ugly real quick.
This is my 500-page understanding
Yay, I
of
got
what
two
it
of
is
them.
that you want.
That is the FAR, the Federal Acquisitions.
This is the book I wrote.
Oh, is that the book you wrote? Okay.
I've written 11 books, but this is...
So are you handing those out? Or is that
so there's enough time for, when you're doing sealed bidding, they want to make sure there's enough time for soliciting, submitting, and evaluating the sealed bids. So sealed bids is when the government issues an invitation for bid, and I'm seeing more of these. I don't know what the transition is, because for the longest time, I would always say in classes, both in government classes when I teach at agencies or when I teach contractors, how many people have been involved in a sealed bid? And nobody would raise their hand. But now you're seeing it more and more, and you're seeing a lot at the state level, particularly Virginia, it ends up being, in Maryland. But basically, this is where they issue an invitation for bid. It has to be a fixed price contract, because the only thing they're going to look at is price, and it's going to be a price shootout. Who's the lowest price they're going to get. Everybody turns in their bids at the same time, and the government opens them publicly, so you can be there for transparency, and they're able to make a decision. You have to have specifications that are precise enough to not require any kind of negotiations or discussions, because pretty much when they issue the requirement, you just respond with your bid, and that's it. And it's not necessary to conduct discussions. You can't conduct discussions during an IFB process. When they do contract by negotiation, which is what we've talked about this entire class, they have to describe the government's requirement, the terms and conditions, the information required in the proposal, and all the factors and significant sub-factors. So everything we talked about with the Uniform Commercial Code, all that data needs to be in there somewhere. And that's how they handle most procurement dollars, is through these negotiated procurements. Commercial items, which is what we talked about last time we were here, is when they buy your commercial products off the shelf, right? The kinds of things that you sell to the commercial public day in and day out. So they can make these commercial items, and they use much easier terms and conditions with regard to commercial items. Okay, so the first contract type we're going to talk about is firm fixed price. It places the risk of full responsibility for all costs and resulting profit or loss on the contractor. So if you price the deal and you figure out a cheaper way of doing something, that's still part of you've increased your profit margin on this particular contract. But on the same token, if it ends up costing you more, then your profit margin decreases because you're spreading it over a wider cost base. It provides the maximum incentive for the contractor because I know I'm only going to get this pot of money. And the more ways I can figure out how to do it more cost effectively, the better off I'm going to be. There's a minimum administrative burden for the government. So in terms of ease of management, firm fixed price is perfect for the government. Contracting officers love firm fixed price because all they have to do is really check to make sure that you're meeting contract deliverables and that you're providing the level of service that they requested in their RFP. If you're doing those things, they don't have to get into all the nitpicky details. So I have a firm fixed price contract with Defense Acquisition University to teach admirals and generals. We agreed on the price and the deliverables that had to be accomplished during that, and every month I just bill them the same amount. I get 1/12 of the total amount. That's how you handle firm fixed price contracts. It's appropriate for using commercial items. It's the only method you can use for commercial item contracts. And obviously there has to be this adequate price competition. So they have to at least have 3 vendors, or they really have to explain a lot as to why they're making a sole source or a single source order. They compare the prices coming in with historical prices. They compare the prices with each other to do that price analysis. And they can ask for cost or pricing information to make sure that they have a realistic estimate of probable cost. So it's not like they just accept your bottom line price. Let's say, for example, all 3 vendors came in within $10,000 of each other. Because 3 different separate companies priced it that way, they're going to feel pretty good that the contractors all understood what they were doing. But if one is really, really low, one's kind of in the midpoint, and one's really, really high, there's something about that requirement that's causing wide variation of what people think the requirement is. So there could be a lot of things that could be the issue. Maybe the low-cost one has no flipping clue what they're doing, right? Maybe the high-priced one is trying to sell a Cadillac solution instead of a Chevy. So the point is that the contracting officer has to sort of do some realistic evaluation of those prices, because at this point, the government doesn't know which one of those is a reasonable price. Now, if the government does their homework, as part of the FAR, they're required to do an independent government cost estimate. So they should have, in the procurement stage, during market research, they should have figured out what this price should be. And the prices coming in should be kind of close to that. And if they're not, the government, who really understands their requirement, and the contractors who understand what the solution could look like, they have to get into agreement, because right now there's a disconnect between the 2 of them. So it's not like they take the prices and just make a word decision. They can still do that evaluation. And you use this kind of firm fixed price when you can identify the performance uncertainties. So if there's a contractor can't give you a firm fixed price unless they know what it is you're asking for, which is why we couldn't give a firm fixed price on Y2K stuff. But when the government knows what their uncertainties are and they can talk to us about it, then we can put some risk dollars in to be able to accommodate that risk. Each of these contract types has various themes.